Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Tesla Motors Club podcast. My name is Seb.
I'm Doug.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Lewis.
On today's episode, takeaways from the Tesla Q4 earnings call Q&A, speculation about the Model 2, and more. Episode 58 starts now. Gentlemen, good to see you guys. I've been out of the game a little bit.
So,
Yep, and everything that's happened since. My last show was the Model 3 Highland, and now the Cybertruck is out. It's been a minute. What's been going on? Catch me up. Doug, you been taking any road trips?
Sorry, Seb, I can't hear you.
I can hear you.
I think
I
it's
hear
the volume attenuation. It sounds like it's going up and down. But
Can you guys hear me okay?
Oh, now we can hear you.
Hear
Did you
you
change
fine.
something? Let me just see
TMC's filtering you, Seb.
I'm being censored.
Let me just check your settings. Oh, you have echo cancellation on? I'm going to turn that off. And
You do realize we're live, Doug.
yeah, I know.
we are live.
I know we are live. But
Can't
heck,
help it. We're
but
fixing
we
it live.
need to be able to hear this guy. Can
Did
you
you
start
not hear me
again?
the whole time?
Yeah, it was really suppressed. It sounded terrible.
Really?
Yeah, just start over.
We've been talking
Nobody's
for
watching.
an hour.
Right, nobody's looking. Another
You
Paul
want to
production.
start over from the top?
Oh, give me a sec here. Let me fix it. Let me edit your settings. I think you need to be a little bit louder. Let me see if I can turn you up a little bit.
Well,
okay.
I'm back,
Editing
Seb.
here.
It is great to have you here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. All right, just say welcome again. And
Yeah, thanks for turning down my volume. Well, assuming it's working now, welcome everybody. Episode 58. We got two topics today. We're talking about the takeaways.
oh, you don't need to redo that part.
Okay.
That was fine.
Well, now we might as well
roll.
shut this down. Well, everybody, thanks for joining. We'll be back next week.
That's right.
No, you can just
Shut it
everything
down.
everything
I'm
after
following you, Seb.
everything after that little intro thing we do. Just as soon as that came back, I couldn't hear you. But now I think you're
That's
okay.
right. Doug
so.
will fix this through the miracle of editing when we're done.
Yeah, sure. I'll edit this live show right now.
Beautiful. We'll fix it in post.
Yeah,
well, guys,
There you go.
it is nice to see you. It's been a while.
It has
What's
been
been
a while.
happening? Doug, have you taken any road trips lately? What's going on?
No rural road trips, but I do have some complaints.
Tell us what grinds your gears. I want Doug to have his own segment.
I thought that was a curmudgeon here. Yeah.
Well, no, it's not. It's not like grinding my gears. There are a couple things I'm working on, little projects, but I feel like they're things that Tesla could fix. One issue I have is that when my car is just parked outside, my Wi-Fi signal there is pretty weak, and I'm paying for premium connectivity, and I would think that the car should be able to tell, like, oh, okay, this Wi-Fi signal is crap. Let me go to the cell signal, which is fine. And I really wish it would do that. Often I'm in the house, I don't want to preheat the car, and then sometimes it just doesn't work. And I know why, because it's connecting to the Wi-Fi, but the Wi-Fi isn't good enough. So I wish it could do that on its own. And the other half of it is that there is all the updates by necessity for some reason have to download on Wi-Fi. I'm paying for premium connectivity. I can't believe that those updates are that big that Tesla won't just allow me to download. I should be able to say, please download this over the cellular network. So I'm trying to fix it. I got one of these doohickeys.
Heck is that?
It is
Standard
a
Wi-Fi.
outdoor Wi-Fi router basically, but it's built to be outside and it works on power over Ethernet. And,
Ubiquity?
But
no, it's just a cheap $30 thing I got on Amazon.
you realize the
TP-Link.
Pringles can works a lot better if you really want a directional signal.
Well, this is MIMO, right? It's not directional except that it uses the antennas to do
yeah,
some
but
phase
if you're
adjustment.
in a point where your car's in a weak position, you can just beam it right to the car.
Yeah, but I don't park in the exact same spot every time. This is cheap. This is $30. This
Boy,
is fine.
Now you're complaining. I mean,
I'm not
Nice try,
complaining.
Mike.
I have a solution. I'm fixing it. I just haven't implemented it yet. The nice thing is I already have Ethernet going out there because I put Ethernet for that Altel EVSE
Now,
charger
I would
I
have
put out there.
expected Doug to have a post out there
So-
with an RJ45 behind a weather box.
You know what? I almost did that. I mean, I was
See?
looking at buying like your normal household router, because it looked like most of these were really expensive until I found one for $30. And I was looking at your normal household router that that costs maybe $20 to $30,
Sure.
and then getting a enclosed, an outdoor box, which would cost another $20 to $30.
Yeah.
But another option I had was I got one of these sort of cheap tiny routers, and I'll show it to you if I can have it on the desk here. So I had one of these guys, and it's like one of those sort of personal router type things,
Sure.
and it has these little antennas. And I was going to stick this inside. I think there'd be enough space inside that Altel. There's like some space in there if you took it apart. And I was going to stick this inside, and then I was going to feed cabling through so that the antenna would then, stick out instead of being enclosed. But you know what? You learn something every day. And this looks like an SMA connector, doesn't it? Right?
It does.
Well, guess what? It's not SMA. It's something called RP-SMA, which stands for reverse polarity SMA. So what they do is, like, normally this would, on a normal SMA connector, this would be the male end,
Sure.
the part with the nut, and then this would be the female end. And what they did, it's mislabeled. They call it reverse polarity. What it really is reverse gender. So they stick the male on this side, and I got my SMA cables. I'm like, what? This won't work.
They don't go.
So I had to buy special RP SMA. But I'm doing a different. This is what I'm doing
Okay.
now. I'm not going to do that.
So just
Really
real
interesting.
quick, a few things to say. First of
Uh-huh.
all, for those that don't know, they're nerding out on this coax cable thing. It has to do with it's sub miniature version. It doesn't matter. Like, whatever, nerds, it's fine. Ignore
Yeah.
that. But Tesla, I do just have to say some positive news of the thing you just complained about. It doesn't actually solve your specific problem, but a problem that I was experiencing, they did solve earlier this month with a software update. So it was version, I'm just double checking here. It's 2023.44.30.8 improved the transition from Wi-Fi to cellular, because those of us who have good Wi-Fi in our garages where we park our cars, when you back out, it would always drop and it would cause my music to freeze or it would cause like weird things. They have greatly improved that. So I'm really enjoying that. Maybe they'll continue this ball.
I'm still waiting.
rolling
My maps freeze when I pull out because of
and
that.
help you,
so.
Doug. Oh, so it's not. So you haven't gotten it yet, Doug?
I haven't
or
gotten it
Mike?
yet. Nope.
Okay.
But so I have that problem just sitting in the parking lot. Like, I will, before I leave, I want to put in my navigation, and the navigation will just spin because it can't find anything because it's connected to weak Wi-Fi. So
Well, that's because you're still on. I think it's more of the
Yeah.
when you lose signal when it transitions, that it's a much smoother switch now. But anyway,
yeah. So hopefully,
maybe they'll cover you at some point with your specific.
hopefully my little external doohickey. It looks like a virus type thing or some kind of insect, but hopefully
Yeah. Giant
hopefully that'll solve the problem.
I thought
but
your complaint was going to be about the internal camera. I didn't.
okay, well that's my other complaint.
turn into
Now,
a net.
now you've done it, Seb. Now
yeah.
you got them on the roll.
I know.
So my first complaint was the connectivity thing, which they could fix. That maybe it doesn't behoove them to because it maybe costs them more money. But the other thing is, so about I can't. I don't know. I'd have to do some statistics, but I'll call it 50-50, but it feels more like 70% of the time when I go out to my car, the internal camera doesn't work for some reason. Doesn't, like, it works sometimes. I don't think it's like a loose connector. I think it's more of a, like, the thing is deciding to work or not, or maybe it needs a reboot or something. But if that camera isn't working, guess what? FSD doesn't work. And so this expensive add-on doesn't work. And what I end up having to do, and me like trying to reboot the car doesn't seem to do anything about it. Doesn't help. So all I can do is like basically disable FSD, and then it'll revert down to autopilot. And so autopilot will work. But it's really frustrating. And then I'm used to FSD. I use it almost all the time. And one of the main things it allows me to do is not really worry about my navigation. and so when I do that, I end up missing turns. Like, oh yeah, I was supposed to actually make that turn myself. So I don't know what to do about that. I mean, I'm out of warranty now. If I made a requested service for that, what's that going to cost me? What are they going to decide to do? I kind of feel like they would try replacing the camera. That seems like a big deal because it's like right on the windshield. So I don't know.
So do we think possible product idea? You think Tesla would go after us if we did like a camera signal spoofer that always looked like you were perfectly facing front and everything was good and you just tap into the wire? And you think that, because that might solve your problems.
Well, yeah, probably. I mean, but that shouldn't be a problem for people. I mean, I guess, well, that would be more complicated. I was going to say you could just stick a postcard of yourself right in front of the thing. But I think now they're supposed to detect, proof of life, like blinking and moving around and stuff, right?
You just have a loop
Breathe on
video
the
feed
lens.
that you just send.
Well, that you could do, yeah. You could have that's very Mission Impossible, but yeah, you have a little a little video loop that's just you.
It's the AI version of the old orange on the steering wheel when it was just autopilot, right? To trick it into.
Yeah, I remember when that used to work.
It still works on mine.
It does?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, really? Because they added something where, and I think when it just sees constant torque, it sort of assumes that you are using a defeat device, and then it will kick you out of autopilot.
Well, I'm sorry your camera is not working, but something's definitely working at Tesla. So takeaways from the
I love the
Q4
segue.
earnings call. Thank you, sir. I wrote a couple of things down, which I thought was quite impressive. So 500,000 cars produced in Q4, roughly same amount shipped. 1.2 million sold of the Model Y, which is insane. And they're at a 2 million run rate, which to me, when I purchased my car, they were just trying to crack 500K manufactured a year. So this is a long shot from that. But why don't we talk about some of the takeaways? So starting with Cybertruck sales numbers. Mike, you want to dig into that one?
No,
We'll go to you, Lewis.
So
I don't follow the Cybertruck. It's not my thing, man.
It's all good, Mike. So one of the analysts, I think it was, or I don't remember if it was an investor or an analyst, somebody asked about Cybertruck sales numbers, I think, in the earnings call. And basically they asked for like, how many have you sold? How deep is the queue? And they deftly danced
They
around
glossed
the
over that. They
question.
did.
They were just like, we're not, they didn't even like acknowledge that question was asked. They just kind of went into, well, we just want to say that we're not, they're not demand limited, they're supply limited. So basically they're trying to manufacture more. They brought up ramping hell.
But they didn't say what supply is the limiting factor.
Also true. Although there was a caveat about the batteries. They did say like it's not because we keep seeing reports
That's
that
right.
it's because
That's
of the batteries. It's not because of the batteries, and it's like okay,
batteries in
whatever.
the production.
the 40
rate.
the production of the 4680s or whatever. Yeah,
They seem to think that's fine.
yeah, they said that they are producing. They said they're producing enough cells for it. They're working on manufacturing. They're trying to get it scaled.
Well,
But
all that really
they
means.
did say. Sorry. Go ahead, Doug.
All that really means though is that the Cybertruck production rate is really slow, right?
Right, exactly.
Well, yes, you can extrapolate that.
The other thing that they said, which kind of reinforces the production is maybe too slow, is they said, well, they're not that far away from selling out for the year. So with the orders that they have, to just make all of them to fill for those orders, they're almost sold out for 2024. So if you want one in 2024, you should get your order in.
Yeah.
But yeah, so again, that could just be, well, yeah, they only make 10 cars a quarter, right? Like, yeah, they're sold out, right? It doesn't actually tell you anything about how it's going. But they seem to claim that demand is there. I think their target, Elon said his target was 250,000 a year is like where they're trying to get to for Cybertruck. So they're hoping one day they could sell 250,000 Cybertrucks a year. They're pointing out things like, oh, it's so noticeable, right? When you look at other trucks, you could see all these trucks. You don't know who made what, right? It's hard to tell from a distance, like, oh, is that which manufacturer? You look at a Cybertruck, there's no question. It's Tesla.
Yeah, so-
Because some would argue, right, Mike, that because no one else is dumb enough to make a car right? No, but anyway, so they claim numbers are good. Demand is still there. They're not demand limited. They're supply limited. So who knows? We'll see how the manufacturer. We all made predictions right in the last show on what we think their sales are going to, or their production is going to look like in this quarter. I think we all pretty much agreed it's certainly less than 10,000 in Q1.
Under 10K for Q1, yeah.
Under 10K for Q1.
I still
We're
think
thinking
that's
maybe
accurate.
1 or 2,000. So we'll see. We'll see where we are by the end of March.
Even so you said, Lewis, they're projecting 250,000 for a year.
That's what they want to get
Best
to.
Best case.
That's their ideal, like, annual how many they sell every year. So that's not going to be this year.
Compared to a Model
Probably
Y,
won't be next year.
which is selling like 400,000 a quarter. I mean,
which, I mean, is, to be fair, right? Like, the Model Y is a phenomenally successful car, especially in the EV market. So they do not intend to outdo the Model Y, but at a price point, I don't think you should consider that, right?
I'm just trying to figure out the economy of scale that Elon likes to go off about all the time. I don't see the scaling there. Not at 250,000 units for the entire year.
I mean, the advantage, I don't know. We're a little off topic, but the advantage of the Cybertruck, I still think, is not even in the Cybertruck. It's all the tech they developed for the Cybertruck. And what they're going to try to pull that into their next gen platform that they call it next gen. We all call it Model 2 because,
like the 48-volt system we'll see filtering down into the next gen cars.
Drive-by-wire,
so forth.
all those things are going to carry forward. Possibly not painting, using the same kind of metal, sheet metal for the, panels and stuff. But yeah, so I think most of the exciting stuff of Cybertruck is all the tech. But, Cybertruck, their ideal is 250,000. I don't know. I'm not sure they'll hit that even next year. Maybe that's, 2026-ish. That might be their target. Mm-hmm. But who knows? They might ramp up quickly like they've I would imagine it's a different tech. There's different problems. There's different things that come up. But also every time you ramp, you probably get better at ramping in general, I would hope.
You would hope.
You would hope, right?
But if they're doing things completely differently every time, then it might be kind of hard. Maybe they figured out the management part, but there's still like stuff that has to be learned, and like the Cybertruck is very different. So I would be interested if this, what from the manufacturing shows up in other vehicles, and if they are really able to get this going. Particularly the body panel stuff, but that's sort of the last thing I would see. But I think that's probably the biggest deal in terms of the manufacturing. But I definitely want to see the 48 volt. I'm not sure about the drive-by-wire. I'm not sure it's really necessary on the other vehicles, but I definitely want to see the 48 volts and all the cars.
That'll probably be one of the easier things to lift over into any new next-gen car. I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I mean the only real issue is supplier things. Already, I think new cars since 2021 aren't really 12 volts. I think they're 16 volts now, right? And so you have to be careful about what you plug in there because, if it's rated for 12 volts, it might not be able to take that voltage. But it'll be a while for the rest of the industry to make that transition, especially with suppliers. But, Tesla tries to be very vertically integrated. And so maybe they'll just make their own stuff.
You think they're going to stick with the panels where the panels are unpainted as a feature? I mean, I can see them doing that. That would reduce the overhead of all the tooling, the paint, the air regulation. All of that would be cut right off the top if they could get away with it.
The real question is if they can really figure out how to do it quickly and reliably. They're learning it with the Cybertruck, right? And if it really is cheaper, then maybe they'll definitely do it in other cars. But there are other considerations. We were talking about the little finger guillotine of the frunk.
The frunk.
Tesla didn't bother to, as far as I know, to put any like sensors on that closing mechanism. So yeah, if you have little kids or grown adults and you have your fingers in the way, they might get severely injured.
Well, as someone that's slammed their hands in the car door by mistake a couple times because you're not paying attention, I mean, it could happen.
Yeah. So I don't know. So there might be other concerns. I would wonder if they couldn't just do the same manufacturing, but then, like, I don't know, add like a rubber gasket around things or something, just because they have all those sharp edges. They could have just a little like thing that just kind of, goes over the edges, or they could even have like a liner stripping that just kind of goes. If they get that micron precision, and if the gaps are like
10
so
micron or whatever
so
it
well
is.
understood, then maybe they can just put a little gasket around there. I think
Caulking?
So it could surgically amputate your fingers.
no, just kind of squeeze and pinch as opposed to cutting into you, because it does seem sharp. And in some of the reviews we've seen, somebody walking by bumping into it, tears their clothes, cuts themselves.
Ouch.
And we've seen that the hood will, at least chop up carrots.
Carrots.
and hot dogs. Actually, I got injured by my Model 3. The corner of the door, I was charging the car, and I think it was windy. And as I'm getting out, I'm wearing shorts. As I'm getting out, the door got blown kind of closed, and the corner of the door I have a scar right now that scraped my leg. It's a very sharp point
Chicks
there.
love scars, so just don't tell them how you got it.
Yeah,
That's
it's a
right.
shark bite. Yeah.
Well, you guys touched on Model 2 speculation, and one of my questions for you was how you think they're going to bring the cost down. You've touched on paint, right? That would potentially save a lot of money per car,
Potentially.
and they wouldn't need the equipment to actually paint everything. But that would also mean they have to bring the sheet metal or hard HFS, I think is what it used to be called, right? Wouldn't that basically force a shape on the Model 2, though, that's very angular, which I think in the i6 on the autobiography, didn't they have a different sketch? So that kind of seems counterintuitive, right? Because it would force it to be very sharp and pointy.
Yeah, I mean, we just don't know. If that's the way they end up going, then they'll do it. I mean, the pictures that you see in the Isaacson, which is an authorized biography, is kind of looks like a kind of a two-seater thing, and that specifically was supposed to be the robotaxi, but as we learned, the compromise was that it would basically be the same platform. So it will be the cheaper car that people can buy, and maybe out the door it will be, like my car supposedly is, my Model 3 is said to be robotaxi capable, which I'm
right.
severely doubting after these years.
Let's not jump ahead. FSD 12, we're going to talk about it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, Tesla is pretty flexible, and I feel like they can change and make decisions at the last minute. And, they've said, okay, this thing will arrive by the end of 2025. I'm not sure what that means.
Whatever arrive means.
Does that mean that it gets unveiled at an unveiling event, or does that mean deliveries? I kind of doubt it's deliveries. It seems a little too soon. And one thing we talked about in our last show is that I feel like Tesla needs to, this unveiling stuff, they really should hold it closer to when they can actually do production. I think there might be some value in doing an unveiling sort of early. You get a sense of the public, see how people feel about it, get some feedback, and maybe there are things that people might want to change about it before it actually goes into production. But yeah, I would want them to not be taking. I mean, with the Cybertruck, it was 4 years. With the Roadster, it's been over 6 years now. And with the Semi, which is not really at volume yet, it's been over 6 years. So I would hope that they'd at least be within the year of unveiling and then producing. And also, with this vehicle, I mean, I don't know how much you would be concerned about the Osborne effect, but I guess they have enough volume now, and I guess they already have to deal with some competition on the lower end, and maybe they don't have to worry too much about it. But if they announce that here's a $2,500 vehicle, and then people wait for it and don't instead just buy a Model 3, I suppose that could be a problem.
25,000, right?
you
25,000
wanna-
would be nice.
What did I say? 2,500.
2,500.
I saw someone made a comment, and I'm sorry I can't attribute it because I don't remember where, but the comment was the 2025 $25,000 vehicle is going to be the 2023 Model S Plaid you bought.
Oh, ouch.
I should deliver it.
Thanks.
It was the Model S Plaid you bought in 2023.
Thanks for that.
Is that your year?
What's that? No, I'm 2022, so mine will be even less.
Oh, you'll be even cheaper.
Yeah. So first, we should just to define the Osborne effect that you said, because I'm not sure everybody knows what that is.
I think everybody knows that.
Does everyone know that? It's
I
a
have no idea
marketing
what
term.
that is. I was going to ask too.
Okay. So it's a marketing term with basically when you announce your new technology, it kind of kills some of your sales of your current technology because people will want to wait. So anyway.
Yeah, Osborne was a
cool
computer
toy.
company in the 80s. They had a portable kind of computer, the Osborne 1, and it was very popular. And they started talking up the Osborne 2, which wasn't even ready yet. And then a lot of people
Just killed their sales.
A lot of people say, well, I'm going to wait for that Osborne 2 then. And it killed their sales, and I think it killed the company. So
Yeah, they didn't survive to make the Osborne 2.
yeah,
So.
there you go.
Well, I don't know if you guys noticed this, by the way, but I feel like I've seen Elon do this a few times now where he specifically states, everybody, there's going to be no questions about new products, but let me tell you about the Model 2, right?
Yeah.
So he's definitely talked about it a few times now. Last time I noticed that was with Sandy Munro on the Cybertruck interview that they've had. It'll be interesting to see when they actually announce it. But do you guys feel like there's going to be enough cost savings and other things they can leverage to bring the price down quite that much? Because the Model 3 is not a huge car. How much smaller could it be, and how are they going to bring the price to that?
So that's actually been talked about in some trade magazines about how hard it is to take an existing car company that maybe has a higher end car and then try to bring out a lower end, more of an entry level car, and trying to make that translation from high to low, because people's expectations are already set. There's certain expectations that the public has with a high end, and if you don't meet them on the low end, people are going to go, oh, screw this. Mercedes has tried it. I mean, BMW's tried it. They've all tried it, and I can't think of one that's been really successful on the low end side.
Well, I think it's definitely true that there are higher end, more expensive vehicles where the customer base is a lot more forgiving. That was certainly the case with the Roadster. It's certainly the case with anybody that has some niche vehicle that has mechanical issues. Think about your Ferraris
Trying
and your,
out there, yeah.
and your Lamborghinis and whatnot. I've said it before about Tesla, as they start to get a vehicle that becomes Toyota pricing, people are going to expect Toyota reliability. So I think actually the low end customer, to a limit, but the low end customer is actually more demanding in a way. But also, I don't really see Tesla. Tesla has, because of its price point, it's been labeled as a luxury automaker, but I don't really see that many luxury things about the car. Certainly early days, part of luxury is service, right? And early days, Tesla service was amazing. It felt very concierge. And with volume, that's had to go out the window, and you're lucky to be able to talk to anybody, really. But also luxury, if you have driven Audis or any sort of, or Lexuses, those sort of cars where they have nice, soft interiors, quiet interiors, where the things don't move around, it's not very plasticky, and the just the instrumentation is nice. Tesla has an aesthetic that's very minimalist. I like the Tesla aesthetic, but certainly when the Model S first came out, I'm like, okay, this doesn't feel like, you have to at least be at, Audi A5 levels here, and it just wasn't there. And they've gotten better in terms of their own fit and finish, but I don't even necessarily feel like the materials are luxury materials.
That's actually a complaint with the new Highland. People are really down on the materials on the interior. They are on Reddit, they are not a fan.
That's too
And
bad because I was looking forward to that because I felt like, okay, as an existing Model 3 driver, I would like things like some little accent lighting and stuff. And Tesla's done weird things to save money, or at least weird for most people, like getting rid of the stalks, right? The turning signals and also for adjusting what gear you're in, or
The
if you're going
center
forward or
horn
reverse.
press.
Even center
You're
horn
hearing
press.
the horn.
That feels like they've brought that back, but that
Yes.
seemed like a really odd oversight, or there must have been some engineering reason that they were forced to do that. But
The rumor is they're working on a new yoke that will have it like in the hardware. So I'm gonna wait and see if it does come out.
I mean, it exists on the Cybertruck. That's not quite a yoke, but it's Squircle
Right.
or whatever. But it works there. I don't understand. This isn't new technology. What's the problem? Why was that? Why did it go away at all?
I agree with your message though. Like whenever, people that I know or whatever, when they're like, "Oh, you have a Model S Plaid, isn't that so expensive?" Blah blah blah, and they want to talk about it. It's like I always have to set the expectation when they first time see it of going, "Look, yes, it was a very expensive car, but it was expensive. The reason I justified the expense is because of the performance." Because it does not feel like $150,000 car or whatever. Now it'd be $110,000 car. It doesn't feel like that if you've ever experienced Mercedes S Class and like other types, even like you said, even Audis and stuff. So it's something that Tesla. Yeah, I don't consider them a luxury car. But I love their aesthetic. I agree with you. I love the aesthetic. I love the feel.
I love the
and, like,
technology too.
performance, the technology, it's fantastic. So it's going to be a challenge when we get, when you go to a larger market, cheaper car. Because I mean, to be fair, I know you didn't mean any offense by what you're saying, but like when you're saying like, oh yeah, when you go to a cheaper market and people not spending as much on a car, they're more demanding. But it's like, but like, rightfully so, right? When you buy a Ferrari, it's not your only car. If your Ferrari is in the shop for a month, it doesn't matter because you have a helicopter and 5 other ways you can get to where you're going. When you're struggling or you have a family and that's your only car, you can't
really depend on
afford
it,
to have it not be reliable. So there's definitely going to be something that Tesla will have to handle. I think personally, in my own experience, they've done a good job. Like I had one situation where my car wasn't working. I got to go there. They gave me a loaner, the whole thing. So I think in those scenarios, as long as they can maintain that, at least that level of service, maybe they'll be okay.
Well, I mean, that already went away. I mean, when I first got my car and all the delivery little niggles, the things I needed to fix, I did get a loaner. But now you're lucky if you get Uber credits. And
Well, I got a Model S loaner when I brought him. Maybe it's because I had a Plaid. I don't know. But like this was 2 months ago, right?
Okay.
They literally were like, here have a Model S, whatever. And so I just had their car for 2 days or whatever.
yeah, I mean, it might have been, I was in the Bay Area, so it might have been the market, but actually it happened here too in Maryland also. I just feel like in the Bay Area, they're close to, they used to just have it, right? The promise was whenever you bring your car in, the loaner car will be the best version of the car. and if you want to keep it, you can, that went away. And then they don't even really administer the loaners anymore. They outsourced it to Enterprise or something.
My last loaner, the front end felt like it was going to fall off. I mean, it had some horrendous creaks and rattles and bangs to it when you went over bumps.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
and Tesla probably isn't maintaining that car. Enterprise
I can
is.
pretty much guarantee they're not.
I have to say it was pretty junky. Like I had a Model S. It was a few years older, and I was just like, oh, it just felt gross. I have to say. But maybe I'm just snobby because I'm used to my car that's super clean and like doesn't have a ton of miles on it. And it was like this is a car that's been used by a lot of people. It kind of felt dirty, but I was like, clean up your car, guys. Like whatever. But anyway. I think to bring the point back to what Seb was originally asking, because we've gone down some fun tangents.
That's what we do.
Yeah, that is what we do. They definitely need to figure out cost cutting, right? Like, Tesla is the best in the industry by far at cost reduction and improving, costs for manufacturing vehicles. They're closer. Even one of the analysts said, "Hey, you're closer to like." Microprocessor and semiconductor and other, electronics industries and tech industries like phones and things, as opposed to the automotive industry with, their rate of cost reduction they've had. And what they made very clear, I think it was their CFO was talking about this, but they basically said, look, we've had these double-digit cost reduction year-over-year improvements. I think it was something like 22% or something like that in the last year. That's not going to continue for the foreseeable future. We're going to keep making cost improvements, but it's going to slow down some until we can get to our next gen platform. And really, so the reason they're doing this next gen platform, they can't scale. If you look at Model Y, Model 3, a Model 3 is just a scaled down Model S. A Model Y is just it's not really a scaled down Model X, I should say. It's really more of a scaled up Model 3, probably. Yeah. But they basically have a car platform, and then they kind of shifted it here and there. The Cybertruck was kind of a big innovation of like, we're going to do something very different than what we've done in the past. And I think their next gen, or Model 2, whatever that is, it's going to take a lot of things out of the Cybertruck for sure. But I think it's fundamentally going to be, it's not going to be, hey, we took the Model 3 and shifted it somehow or made it smaller, or even the Cybertruck and made it smaller. It's going to have some pretty big changes to be able to hit the price targets that they need to hit.
One of the things I've read, Lewis, maybe you have too, since you tend to geek out like I do on details, is this Model 2, or whatever they wish to call it, the rumor is a magnesium frame. Instead of the current castings they're doing, it's like they're taking the castings and building on top of it, but they're going to use magnesium full length. It's pretty interesting if it actually works out that way.
What are the implications of that?
I would think cost and strength. I mean, the magnesium works very well. It might be easier to cast. I mean, those are the first two that come to mind.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm not familiar with. Again, I'm not as much of a car expert as you are, Mike. So I don't know how that would help in a car traditionally. I know like from like bikes and things, magnesium frames are usually around like it's way to get closer to like your performance of like carbon fiber, but it's much cheaper than carbon fiber. So it gives you lighter and stronger.
It's got some downsides, but
I'm sure it has downsides. Yeah. I know that like that's where I've seen it before is when they look at like racing bikes and things like that. They try to.
But if you're looking for the ultimate likeness, that seems to be where most people land is using magnesium in one form or another.
And in theory, right? What's one of the biggest expenses in the cars is the batteries. One of the biggest problems people have is the range. How do you help the range in an EV?
Lighten it.
Aerodynamics and weight, right?
Yep.
And so I think whatever it is, Tesla's already shown that they're like best of the best when it comes to aerodynamics into their designs, right? Like that's because it's so important. So I'm sure the Model 2 will have a fantastic drag coefficient, right? It's just going to have to. But they also, weight is going to be a big factor. And how do they, reduce weight? Even things as silly as paint start mattering for weight, right? Like, they're probably not going to have as many bells and whistles, as many features. The materials, everything they choose, of how they build it is all going to be about weight. Hopefully, also they'll have battery improvements, right? They talked a little bit about the 4680 cells. That's not the limiter for the Cybertruck, but they still do need to ramp production more. They're still working out issues. They're still trying to improve it. They'll probably need to get some improvements there into what they do, or maybe again, it might be a completely different cell, or maybe it's going to be the LFP battery types, right. Although that kind of kills your weight advantage. So anyway, we'll have to see what they go with, but there's definitely room for them to do better, Seb. So I think that they can improve, but it's also going to take some Herculean engineering efforts, which, to be honest, Tesla's done many times in their history. So I'm usually skeptical about what they're going to do, and I am skeptical about things when it comes to like Optimus and FSD and all these other things, as I've been on the show before. But I do think realistically, if anybody can deliver a $25,000 EV that isn't a piece of junk, like that actually has the utility value, and they aren't losing money selling the car, I think Tesla is that company. I do think, though, that they will have to be careful with Chinese manufacturers. That's one area where they could suffer competition here. And Elon even stated in the earnings call, like, essentially tariffs are what are going to allow people to compete. He straight up said, if it wasn't for tariffs, the Chinese car companies would kill every automaker because they can just deliver a value for price point that nobody else can. And I feel like Tesla's that way in the US. Tesla, as we've seen, their margins are way better than every other car company. They've been able to drop their prices. And when they did that, a lot of the traditional manufacturers went, oh, crap. And they kind of pivoted a little bit back towards ICE. They were like, we're not going to invest as much in EVs because they realized there's literally no way they can't lose money with how they build cars and their process. And so Tesla has a huge advantage in the US, but even compared to Chinese car manufacturers, I still think they'd probably lose that battle without import tariffs. So again, can they do it? Probably. I feel pretty confident they'll pull it off. But do I think they're going to pull it off like immediately? Like, it's not going to be this year, right? We've got to wait for the factory in Mexico to come online. They've got a lot of technology to develop. They've got to learn from Cybertruck, right? They need to get more Cybertrucks on the road. They got to learn how, what are issues with their 48 volts? How is that working? Are there other problems?
I feel like
what about the machining, the manufacturing? Yeah, so they'll have a lot to learn, but I think realistically we'll hear more next year. And my guess is we probably won't see a shipped Model 2 before 2026, but we'll see. Sorry, go ahead, Doug.
I feel like Elon was very strategic in the way he presented the Chinese issue, and that this wasn't a Tesla problem. This is a U.S. Automaker problem, and they have all
100%.
that lobbying and whatnot, and especially this administration is very pro-union, and so I wouldn't be surprised if that was basically a signal to that they'll have to do something, not for me, but for all y'all,
the greater good.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think you guys make very good points. BYD is actually marketing their products very aggressively in Europe. So the timing, I think, is very interesting, right? This is, at least in my opinion, the first time that Tesla will have to compete on different merits, because you guys brought up a good point earlier. The experience in a Model S from 2014, even maybe today, is not the same as a Mercedes or an Audi of similar price. But someone like me, and I would imagine you guys are similar, I didn't buy the car to be like an S-Class. I wanted it because it's a Tesla, and it's really interesting, the technology, and I actually want to talk about FSD next, so we'll go to you, Louis. But the last point I wanted to make is, I don't know if you saw this, but Porsche just announced the Macan EV.
Yep.
And in my opinion, that is the first car that's not a Tesla that just happens to be electric. Usually there's always been a gimmick where it's like branded in blue and it's got like lightning bolts all over it. The Macan is a really nice looking car that just happens to be electric. And I think we'll see more of that. And I think that will force Tesla to compete.
Not overlooking the fact that when you get into it, it's a Porsche.
Yep.
It's
That's
got
right.
the look, it's got the fit and finish, it's got the materials, it's got everything you expect out of a Porsche.
And the price point is phenomenal for an SUV, especially from that brand.
Yeah.
It's like $80,000 base price or something,
Yep.
which is like, are you kidding me? I agree. That's essentially Porsche throwing a gauntlet down, going like, oh,
But-
you want a luxury SUV that's an EV? Forget your Model X. Heck,
Polestar
potentially
is
forget
right-
your Model Y.
I mean,
like
Polestar's
you know,
right behind them, Lewis. I mean, I got into a Polestar and I was seriously impressed how well built that car was. I didn't care so much for the center console and some of the design, but from a fit, finish, build material, the car was spot on. And again, for the price point, it's very impressive.
Well, I wonder what kind of margins Porsche can do on that vehicle, because it seems like almost everybody else is selling their EVs at a loss. Porsche is
just
part
because
of
Ford
They'll make money.
31,000 per truck. I mean, that's a hell of a loss.
Porsche is part of the Volkswagen group, and Volkswagen hasn't necessarily been the best EV company, right?
That's true.
So
The ID has not saved the world like they thought it would.
yeah. So I mean, and Porsche, I mean, they've been talking about vehicles forever. It seems like I mean, I remember the Tesla killer. Every article was a Tesla killer back in 2010, and the Volt and the Leaf came out, and those were the Tesla killers. But those were, not inspiring vehicles, even if they were, they had utility. And then Porsche had their Mach-E, and that just took forever to actually happen. And I'm not sure that's been a great. It's turned out great for them. So we'll see. I remember that Fiat had their issue with like their CEO was basically like they wanted to kill that Fiat 500 because they lost money on everyone. And so at the 80K price point, you can hide a bit more. And those vehicles tend to have a large margin, but I wonder how much of it is eaten up by the drivetrain.
Well, their goal internally, I think, is around 20%, and they're known to have very healthy margins. And I didn't mean to take us down a tangent to talk about Porsche, but
yes, you did.
To Lewis's point, well, it's a German.
That's the German in you.
Can't help myself. To Lewis's point, the turbo, I think, is 105, that's pretty close to the Plaid, right? And the quality is just very different. But I think we can all agree one of the differentiators, obviously, for Tesla has always been self-driving, FSD. And in the Q4 earnings call, there was I think a shout out on Dojo and then also the next version of FSD. So Lewis, we'll go to you, but I also want to mention this comment that just came in. Somebody said they would buy the Macan because they would bet it doesn't rattle,
that's right. Car fan.
Funny. Yeah. That is funny. So Lewis, Dojo, full self-driving. What's new on that front?
Man, so Doug and I were talking before the show about this. It was kind of funny. So Dojo last year, Tesla was basically selling this up as like, this is our differentiator. This is gonna enable Tesla to crush the competition.
The world.
We have our own. It's our own architecture, our own design of a system for doing.
And it will achieve
learning.
sentience.
The singularity will happen in a Dojo cluster. No. And it was kind of funny because they had this whole hype thing with their AI days of Dojo and threw a lot of specs out and a lot of semiconductor nerdiness. I definitely nerded out on several of their conference talks that they weren't Tesla events, just talks they did at semiconductor conferences, and machine learning stuff, which is really cool. Like, it's really impressive tech and things they're doing. However, when asked about it, Elon kind of like backpedaled a little bit and was kind of like, well, it's a high risk, high reward bet. And basically they're still doing most of their stuff off of NVIDIA's GPUs, just like the rest of the machine learning industry. They're still spending a ton of money, like many, many millions, if not billions of dollars on GPUs. And so it's kind of like, oh, so what about that Dojo thing? And again, he basically, he said they're still investing in it. They still see it as potential upside. They still think it's going to help them in the long run, potentially. But it's a high risk bet, not just a risky or just lower. It's a very high risk bet with a very high potential return. And they are using it. They keep saying they're using it, but it's like, but how much are you using it, and to what scale, and what are the problems? I'm sure they're like, it's probably like most things. They started doing it, they're running into problems, and now they're working through those problems. And they're not sure if they can, what the upside will be if they get through all of them. So either way, I was a little disappointed to hear that about Dojo, but also, it is reality, right? Like, you can try to come up with a new architecture, new system design, and it may be better. Sometimes reality, though, it's not better, right? There have been lots of attempts in computing and over the history of computers.
This is true.
Where they try different chipset, or instruction sets, different, architecture designs.
Intel.
Intel, like Itanium was a whole
Itanium.
thing.
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah,
that was a disaster.
That killed Silicon
Intel's
Graphics.
Future, right? Like Itanium was going to be Intel's future of how they revolutionize server computers and all of that.
And it killed SGI.
Yeah, it killed companies. Completely crushed, like failed as a product. And so that stuff happens even when you're a leader and more than anyone else on how that stuff plays out. And again, NVIDIA's making bets on things like that too, on their own internal stuff. So
Elon, he also bought a ton of compute from NVIDIA for XAI, right?
Yes. Sort of. They're working off of Oracle's cloud. My understanding is they're working off the Oracle cloud, and Oracle's cloud platform. So for those that don't know, there's a whole thing with Larry Ellison. He was on the board for a little while in Tesla, whatever. But they were using Oracle as their cloud provider as opposed to Amazon or Google or Microsoft. And there was a whole debate, but like Oracle's buying NVIDIA GPUs like crazy. They have these big deals for it. And yeah, so anyway, I'm pretty sure that's where XAI is getting their NVIDIAs, is basically not directly Tesla buying them. They're doing it through their cloud provider. Sorry, go ahead, Doug.
Well, it would be nice though, that intercompany synergy Elon likes to have if if a dojo was successful, if that's something that you could sell to XAI. I mean, it's a little bit of self-dealing, but I'm sure there are legal ways to do that. And but hopefully it works out.
Yeah, I mean, I originally thought that like, hey, they'll XAI will benefit from Dojo, but I think what we're seeing is they're not benefiting from it yet.
Well, Tesla's not benefiting as much as they want to. Yeah.
Exactly, and Tesla's not getting the return yet. Again, he didn't want to write it off as like it's a failure. He still says they're still working on it. It's still high risk, high potential upside. They think the rewards are still potentially worth it. But here's what I would say: if they knew now what they knew several years ago, they probably maybe wouldn't have done it. You know what I mean? Because like the ROI is usually a factor of time and money, right? And I think the time extension is much longer than they anticipated, to where maybe the money isn't, the return isn't there. But I don't know. We'll see.
I wonder how much of that delta in enthusiasm between the AI day and this earnings call is time, experience versus the audience. The AI days is basically a recruitment event. And the earnings call is, you need to be, you want to try to be conservative.
Temper expectations so your stock price doesn't plummet.
Yeah.
Like it did?
Yeah, well, real successful there, huh?
Well,
that's fair. It could be that he's just as excited about it, right? And it's just a different audience. That's fair. They did admit, they admitted that their AI day stuff is primarily for recruitment. The other thing that was interesting though is he pointed out that maybe they'll do some more this year, but they also don't want to do too much of it because they felt like their competitors get a huge advantage because they get to see a lot of the inner workings. There was a joke about how their competitors freeze frame and look at every frame of the video to see what they can glean out of what Tesla's doing. And it's like, okay, I'm sure your competitors do look at what they're doing. They all do this.
Everybody does it.
How much of you're going to give them advantage, right? Like, I don't know how true that is. I used to always joke when I worked in, semiconductor that like, please let's just open source everything, put it all on the internet, let our competitors use it, because it'll take them so long to figure out how to do what we're doing with what we did. We'll be 10 years ahead of them. Like, please try to use our stuff.
I was thinking of all the debugging they could do for you. Yeah.
Exactly. So anyway, so I don't know how true it is that like, they're going to lose a lot of IP stuff. It could be just ideas that they're giving out because, again, Tesla likes to showcase stuff way before they've gotten very far with it.
Yeah.
So it's possible that like they really are, shooting themselves in the foot by doing this, because they are showcasing something that they want to work on that will be, 5 years later. And like, yeah, that's plenty of time for a competitor to compete with you. But
I mean, you definitely see it with SpaceX and like Chinese private space. Like you see basically here's a Falcon 9 clone, here's a Starship clone, here's something that's in between a Starship and a Falcon 9, and you would think that okay, the shape of a rocket there's not a whole lot of variation, but it looks really similar. so I think that would happen. Somewhat related to what we've been talking about with the AI stuff, and I don't know if you guys can provide a little more color on this, but and it came up in that earnings call is that Elon is trying to get or regain 25% control of the company, and his rationale seems to be related to AI. Like he wants to be able to be influential, like if Tesla achieves AGI in the process of building FSD, or I'm not sure exactly how big implications he was making, but it almost seemed like he was threatening that he might leave if he's not, or the innovations will stop if he doesn't get what he wants there. And like how important is it really for him? Like he already is very powerful. Like he's trying to get more power or more control, or he wants to retain control or have more control over the direction of the company.
I think we would be better served if Elon would just focus on one or two things instead of spreading himself across whatever catches his eye at the moment.
But I mean, do we even understand what he's actually trying to do there?
I think. Oh, do you want to go, Mike?
Well, ultimately, it's control. I mean, it's control of an emerging technology that he thinks he should control outright. And the board's not going to let him do it, not the way it's stacked right now. But if he's got 25% control, then he can do it.
Well, he has
He can do
pretty
what he
much
wants.
control
more
over the
control.
board. I mean, they
Yeah.
rubber stamp anything he does. It
I don't
does
think
make
they'll
me
stamp
think
this
of
one, though.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but it does make me think of something Sam Altman said, which was that Elon wants to save the world as long as he's the one that does it. And
Right.
so,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I wonder if that.
But
plays
he's
in
been
there.
trying to save the world with Tesla. That energy. He was going to save the world energy-wise with Tesla. He's going to save the world with Mars. With X, the rockets and everything. Neither one's fully there yet, and so now he
Yeah.
wants to save the world with AI. But we haven't finished the first two.
I mean,
I mean, he's done a lot though, right? He's been
not denying
largely
that.
influential.
No.
But
Go ahead.
it does sort of bring me back to that analogy I keep making about the AI alignment problem. It's the Elon alignment problem. Like, will his control actually be to the benefit? I mean, I think so far he's done a lot of stuff for the benefit of mankind, but I do see areas where I feel like his judgment might not be correct. Just because and I've mentioned before, like his sense of Optimus, like the robot, to him the dystopian possible outcome is the Terminator, and that's like, okay, that's the bad outcome, that it becomes a kill bot, but otherwise it's mostly good and it's positive. But
Oh, like Westworld?
yeah, okay. You did mention Westworld at the then also. So, but yeah, that's the dystopian, is that they take over and kill people or enslave us or whatever. But I feel like he doesn't pay attention to the most likely outcome, where the robots take the jobs of people that aren't otherwise going to be able to find jobs, and how we align as a society if that happens. And what that does is it pushes people at the top higher, and then people on the margins down.
Lower.
And he's already at the very top, so it's all up for him. I
all
guess.
gravy.
Yeah, it's all gravy. So I feel like he misses that opportunity, and I felt that in the speech that he gave when they displayed at the second AI day, not the first one where they had the person in a suit dancing around, but the second one where they had the one gingerly walk out. He seems to miss that scenario, which is, I think, the most likely one if we don't do anything about it, if we don't try to manage it in a certain way. So
You've inspired me, by the way, to reenact the final scene in Terminator 2 where it goes like this.
That's good.
Brilliant.
for
Excellent
the audio
stuff.
listeners, he did the thumbs up from on
Two
those.
thumbs up, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
much more positive.
I want to say to what you're, asking, Doug, that I definitely think it's more about control than it is about just the money. Obviously, I feel like he regrets giving up the amount of control that he did in his Twitter acquisition. Right, he sold a bunch of stock as part of that, and some of it was leveraged and whatever. And it's like, I think he is definitely concerned about control. Do I think realistically it's because of like, oh, I want to be able to control the sentient AI or whatever? It's like, no. I think Elon is deathly afraid of being kicked out of his own companies ever since it happened at PayPal, right?
Right.
Like
I
it
agree.
literally happened to him, and ever since he has done everything in his power to not allow that to happen again. I think it's part of why he doesn't take certain companies public. I think it's part of why he has such an iron fist on the board. Like he does effectively control Tesla's board.
And he kicks out people that look like they might rise to be leaders, right?
He kicks out anyone that will challenge his authority out of the company and things like that. So, I mean, I think it's a control thing. I think it's because he's afraid of being removed for whatever reason, right? As the company continues to do well. Also, I'm sure, like, no one's going to say no. Even no one becomes a billionaire because they aren't interested in amassing wealth. It doesn't just happen by accident. You have to have an interest in that. So there's also always a monetary thing, right? As we've seen, people that are billionaires, it's never enough, right? For the vast majority of them, more is better. So I'm sure that, yeah, he'd also like to make more money on his, what he views as his hard work. Not going to say that he isn't a big factor in why, you know, his companies are successful. So anyway, it's like, it's one of those things of like, yeah, it's a control thing. It's a money thing, but probably more control. And do I think they're going to do it? They probably will. You know, I saw Mike in chat, you know, made the joke. He's tanking the stock on purpose so he can get his 25% for less. You know, you never know, like, what the motivations are behind some of these things, but it's definitely, I think he's just afraid of getting kicked out of Tesla. Just for as an ego thing, right? Like let's be honest. You talked about it. He does have a bit of a messiah complex, right? Like he does all these things to help humanity. He does all these things because, you know, he's worried about the future of mankind and all this other stuff. He does have a lot of kids, right? He has a vested interest in our, you know, civilization and society's, you know, continuation. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's definitely just the whole, does he genuinely believe that it's because the singularity is going to happen and then he won't be able to control it? I mean, maybe, but I don't think he's that stupid.
Unlikely at best.
I don't think he's that dumb. That's a really dumb take, in my opinion.
Yeah, I doubt that, but he does want, it's, I mean, even without the singularity, there is a lot of power there, and I feel like he wants to be the one to wield it, or at least to shepherd it in the direction it goes. I mean, that's what he talks about all the time. That was the purpose of OpenAI and all that. Again, that alignment issue, but you know, aligned with him isn't necessarily aligned with you know, the rest of humanity. Though he does often put things in those terms. Earth will decide, right? So.
Well, he did specifically mention activist investors, right? So I agree with you guys. I think it's a very human, understandable fear. And it's PayPal PTSD, right? It's just, it happens to you once. You don't want to let that happen to you again. You guys did mention Optimus and you mentioned FSD. So Lewis, why don't you maybe quickly summarize what's happening in FSD 12? They did talk about reductions of code, but maybe you can just explain for everybody if there's real world value to the user, or if it's just easier for Tesla to manage the code base going forward.
Yeah, so I mean, again, I don't have FSD 12 yet, so I can't speak to how it performs. However, the good news is for all of you FSD fans out there, they claim that over the next few weeks, they will be releasing FSD 12 to about 400,000 vehicles. So, so those of us that have FSD, we will or should be getting. Doug's holding up his antenna so his car can.
So I can download the damn thing.
Yeah, I can download updates. So we should be receiving FSD 12 in the next few weeks. Now, what does that mean? So FSD 12, this is what we know. What we know is they claim they've removed all of the C++ code or all of the manually curated rules and decision making for how it drives. Now, does that actually mean all? Maybe, probably not. There's probably still some in there. But the key point is all FSD that we have up to this point is the neural nets, the AI part, if you want to talk about it in those terms, is just doing the image recognition and the, you know, just receiving the video feeds and kind of mapping things out into space and going, this is what I think things are happening. But then all of the actual thought, the decision of what do I do based on that information is not happening through what we, you know, people generally refer to as AI. And version 12, that's different. So version 12, they've been working on it for over a year. And it's now the thing that literally there's neural nets all the way down, as we would like to joke. It's the AI itself is making the decisions on how to drive your car. So the argument is because of that, So one of the challenges, like why do driving cars, why is it so hard? It's because traditionally in writing software, you write logic, you write rules. You say, when this happens, do this. When this happens, do that. And the problem with a real world scenario like driving a car is there's too many edge cases. It's physically impossible for humans to just write, when this happens, do this. But not in this case, but except when that happens. Like, it just, the logic becomes exponentially
Big
explosive, and you just can't do it anymore. So how does a human brain works? Not the same as a neural net, but similar in some degree, where basically you just throw a lot of data at it and it just automatically from the data learns patterns of how to do things. And that's basically what they're doing with FSD, is they're throwing a lot of data at it. And before, that data used to find patterns to figure out things like stoplights and stop signs and road markings and lanes and all that kind of stuff. And many of you may have strong opinions on how well or that works. Because sometimes it works wonderfully and sometimes it doesn't work so well. But now they've got way more data and they've done way more training and more refinement. And it's also going to be doing things like, this is the lane I want to be in, and I'm going to be turning the wheel like this, or those types of things. So again, we don't know for sure without actually seeing the code, being on the team and not being allowed to talk on this. I couldn't tell you specifically like what they've really done beyond it's more neural nets and less hard, coded, manual logic design.
One thing I found encouraging about it is that apparently it's running well, or at least they're spending their time making it run on hardware 3, which is what my vehicle has. I'm not sure what the percentages are, given that their deliveries, they deliver a lot more cars now than they used to. I'm not sure how many current vehicles on the road are hardware 3 versus hardware 4, but they're designing it for the hardware 3 vehicle, thankfully. Yes. And supposedly it's working on that. So that to me is encouraging, since I'm stuck with hardware 3, and it makes them closer to delivering something, right?
And early adopters seem to be singing its praises. So I will say, that being said, they always sing Tesla's praises. But the claim, most of them, not all of them, most of them tend to sing Tesla's praises, hence how they become early adopters, or they might get voted off. But what I will say is many of the early feedback, though, seems to indicate that it does work significantly better, to the point where Tesla is basically, Elon has said this, they will likely drop the term beta from FSD with version 12. So that doesn't mean it won't be called beta when we all get it. It might not be called beta.
I'll believe that when I see it.
But at some point with version 12, Elon seems to indicate that they will drop the word beta. That's how good it is. I've seen multiple reports of people saying they've driven with 0 interventions. Whereas before, it drives great most of the time, but you have a few interventions here and there. They're saying, no, I did drives that I used to always have interventions, and now I have 0. And I'm not even feeling like a jerk, right? Because many of you that drive with FSD, you'll realize drivers around you kind of will be annoyed if you just let FSD drive all the time, which is why there are people that say it works great versus people that say it doesn't work great. Those of us that are concerned about appearing like jerks will press the gas, we'll turn the wheel, we'll take over, because we are aware of the fact that we're bothering other drivers around us by letting the car do it. Yeah. Some folks, they just say, but can it physically do it? Forget everybody else's feelings. Does it work? Can it literally get me there without me dying? And yeah, it kind of can. It's just you're going to piss off everyone you drive around. So the argument is FSD 12 drives a lot closer to an actual person because it's been learning from how people drive, as opposed to hard-coded C++ code that's just like, oh, do this, do that, do this, and the AI is just doing like. So again, I'm skeptically optimistic, looking forward to getting my hands on it. I've talked to my wife about it a few times already. She's probably sick of me bringing it up. About it. Well, okay, my wife's a principal engineer. She's also a geek, but she doesn't give 2 craps about the car driving itself, right? She's not, she doesn't care about driving. So, but anyway, so hopefully we'll get it in the next 2 to 3 weeks ish by now. And yeah, we will definitely be giving you some real time response feedback of our experiences once we get it.
Something that I'm impressed. I like the idea of more neural nets, but I would rather Tesla just sort of focus, and maybe it's correlated, but I would like them to focus on the embarrassing things, the wipers,
windshield
parking assist. Now, there are some people that have this sort of Tesla Vision parking assist, and I don't have that yet. I believe that's not version 12. That's it's that.
No, it's
Go ahead.
yeah, the existing software. So the version that even you and I have technically has that new vision, but it's disabled if you have ultrasonic sensors.
Yeah, that's annoying to me. Right? If I don't care if I'd like to see this visualization. I don't care if it's actually doing anything or controlling. If you're still relying on the ultrasonic sensors, I don't want the ultrasonic sensors to go away. I'd be kind of sad if I have some hardware there and they just disable it via software. But go on, share the love. What's the deal here?
It would be nice. They've done this a few times where they release software version that has a new feature, and then based on which hardware you have, you either get it or you don't get it. Or you're stuck on the old, or you're stuck on the new. It would be nice if they allowed you to make the decision where you go, hey, I have ultrasonic sensors, but what if I want to try it without the sensors for parking assist or to see the visualization or whatever? I agree. It would be nice if you could do that. It would be really nice if they actually did sensor fusion and let me work off of having the sensors and doing the visualization as like a best of both worlds. But they're not going to do that because they're solely on the mission of get rid of the sensors, get rid of those things where possible, primarily for cost cutting. So that's part of
vehicle.
Yeah. Well, what I'll say is it's what it seems to be with the software is because of how difficult it is to train and improve and do all these things. They're trying to get to a base level software that works for all cars. Whereas like some cars will have software and then they'll have like special software that adds features. Tesla technically has that with FSD being a feature that you pay for, but the FSD itself is to the lowest common denominator hardware. So not having radar, not having ultrasonics, which again is kind of unfortunate, but it's way easier for them to focus on one way of getting FSD to work than to be like, oh, but what if you have this, right? Imagine a future, this would be great if it's like, oh, but my car has a LiDAR, so I'm better at this. Or, oh, my car also has a radar, I have extra cameras, so I'm better at these things. That's what I would want a good software stack to be able to do. That's kind of what I would expect out of projects like Comma AI or other types of things where they're like, no, I want a dynamic hardware capable, self-driving system. But they're just trying to get to level 3 at this point. So they're like one way, one path, simple, lowest common denominator hardware. Let's just make it work. It's not what I would enjoy, but I get why they're doing it. So, I don't blame them.
That would be interesting that, having a different sensor suite, that's just part of the neural net that creates the vector map of the world around it. And then that's what gets fed into the decision-making neural net. So yeah, in theory, one might be a little more perceptive than another, but the one with the lower sensor count maybe is still adequate.
Exactly.
Well, even if it's intentional, it's an interesting way to piss off two groups of people at the same time, right? Because the folks with the ultrasounds, they might want to try the visualizations, and then vice versa, the people who have them might prefer just having the sensors in the first place. But very interesting. Well, I think the last topic we wanted to cover is the advancements with Optimus, right? And partially, probably that's owed to the advancements they're making with FSD and the vehicles. So, any thoughts you guys have on what Optimus might mean for the future of Tesla?
I'll just say, what we've seen lately, there's some video of Optimus folding a T-shirt and. Yeah. What was impressive about that was the dexterity of the fingers. Tesla seemed to go all out with a proper sort of human simulating hand, as opposed to, you'll see some robots just have a sort of a 3-finger kind of grip. Yeah. And this seems to have all the dexterity. The other thing is in the design of the Tesla fingers, or the hand of the Teslabot, that they've gone the human modeled route where they're using tendons, and the actual, if you look at your arm, all the strength of your fingers is actually in your forearm, and there are tendons. They're basically like cables being pulled by muscles in your arm, and that the advantage of that is that you can have a manipulator that can do fine motion because you've moved you've moved the actuator, like the bulk of the muscle or the bulk of the motor, away from the actual manipulating instrument. So that's modeling nature, but that's the smart way to do it, and it gives a very sort of human kind of looking hand. The caveat of that video, though, was it was someone sort of remote controlling it as opposed to any sort of AI controlling the robot. But it did show that, okay, this is a device, a machine that has some capabilities, at least mechanically, if not compute wise. So, and I guess there was talk about it becoming something that ends up on the Tesla production floor, helping manufacture the vehicles. I'll be interested to see it when it happens. I think purpose-built robots make a lot of sense, like those KUKA robots, and making a Omni vehicle or Omni bot, a bot that can do anything a human can, doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense when you have very specific tasks. If you know that this is a specific task, I think it might be cheaper to have the thing that is specific for it. But there are a lot of human-built tasks. I mean, a lot of these things are done by humans, so a lot of the stuff around it is sort of human-sized kind of problem. So it'll be interesting. I think they should certainly eat their own dog food with it. They should make use of the bot themselves before they're selling it to other people. But I'm sure they'll sell it to anybody. At the point that they're ready to sell it to somebody, and if they can make some money on it, they'll probably do it. I think Tesla is not shy about making their customers, public beta testers. So, and that would be interesting for a certain type of customer. If I had money to burn, it'd be interesting to have a humanoid bot that can at least walk around. Can it sweep the floor? Maybe. If
it could just do my laundry for me, I'd easily buy one 10 grand. No.
If it could actually fold my clothes, that's a big thing. Because that's the worst part, right? Putting your clothes in the washer, put it in the dryer,
Easy.
no
That's
big deal.
easy.
Folding your clothes and putting it away, that's the pain point.
That's
Totally agree.
that's the main use case of why they're developing the spot. That's probably also why they claim that it would generate more revenue than the car business, is because of all of us idiots not able to fold our clothes.
Well, it depends on the
Yeah.
price point, but it's certainly more like not everybody needs a car. And if you think about, how a society should be designed, people shouldn't need cars. There should be adequate public transportation. But a personal bot, that will take care of your menial tasks, or certainly that can do the 3Ds, right? What is it? Dangerous. What do you know what those are, Lewis? Dangerous. Something about it being drudgery.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
And dull. I think dull is one of them.
It's dull, dirty, dangerous.
Dull, dirty, dangerous. Yeah. So if Teslabot can do the 3Ds, I mean, it does look. Right now, it looks kind of delicate, though. Like the dirty part, you'd probably need to seal things up a little bit better. But it's hopeful. It's interesting and I like that Tesla's working on this thing. They've admitted it's mostly part of a recruiting tool, but if they can get some actual use out of it, and other car companies have done this. Toyota had the Asimo. And I guess some other car companies have worked on sort of robots, but it's only gone so far. And because of who Elon is, I feel like it's this will get it needs to get somewhere where he's like, yeah, this is impressive, isn't it? So it has to get to that point. So it's like bragging rights. This is cool. The future looks like the future kind of thing. So
Yeah, I definitely agree with Doug. Like the funny thing is, if you look at sci-fi and you look at like robots and sci-fi and stuff, they always have these like humanoid robots that are like general purpose, whatever.
That's because they can stick somebody in a suit.
Exactly. Like the idea of that is such a dumb idea for the vast majority of like actual, like if you think about it, like humans are really good general purpose machines effectively, right, to do lots of things. Are we the fastest runners? No. Well, if you need to run fast, you wouldn't pick a human. You would make a thing that's really good at running fast. If you need something that can carry a lot of weight, there are ways to do that. If you need to precisely do repetitive motions at like, you know, high speed, or do like, it doesn't make sense to use our form. It's just it's an inefficient way of doing it. So it's almost like, honestly speaking, there are a few use cases where humanoid robots make a lot of sense. And I think hopefully Tesla goes down those paths for some of them, or it's going to be a bad product. But like, effectively, yeah, it's a recruiting tool. It's a look how cool this is. It feels cool, right? When you see it, you're like, oh, that's awesome. I want that. I like the idea of it. He talked about Westworld multiple times to other people on the earnings call, being like, ooh, like every time he would say Westworld, they kind of cringe because they're like, don't give people the negative connotation of, you know, robot uprising killing everyone. But it really is. It's like, it's a Westworld idea. Guess what? Westworld is built for a certain idea. That's one of the use cases where humanoids make sense. Doug's
keeping it family friendly.
I'm keeping it family friendly. Doug understands what I'm saying. So there are a few out there, and honestly, being a general purpose housebot that can do many different things, it has to have a lot of different utilities. That would be a legitimate product. But if it can only do one thing, like if it can only cook or only do dishes or something like that, guess what? We already have robots for some of those things, right? Your dishwasher is a robot that's really good at washing dishes. Your washing machine is a robot that's really good at washing clothes. If you made it a humanoid, it would not be better at that task.
But the dishwasher doesn't load itself.
Exactly. So the notion is, how do we close the gap? How do we expand out from what those machines currently do? You know, how do you bridge that gap? How do you fill in all the other? So if you had a humanoid robot that could load and unload the dishwasher and put things into the cabinets and fold your clothes and put it away, like those types of things, then it's a great product. But that's really hard to do all of those things well, or at least well enough. So are we close to getting one? No. Like, he says we're going to sell some 2025, right? That's what he being Elon. Elon said 2025, they hope to ship some units. To me, that means 2025, they're maybe using some of them in some of their own factories and working out kinks and seeing some problems. Like, maybe they're competing a little bit with Boston, Dynamics and some other companies' factories and warehouses. But like, the vast majority of it is like, it doesn't make sense. You don't need a general purpose robot for most things. You need a very specialized robot. Right. So I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. You know, Jones one just said 10,000 is a great deal. Yeah, if $10,000 and it can do house stuff like that, I think is a killer product. Realistically, it probably will cost them $50,000 to make one, or $30,000, and it's not going to be able to do most of the things we would want it to do. So, whatever. It is what it is. But it's exciting to see. I hope it does get them good talent. I hope they keep improving it. We need more companies pushing the envelope. I think that's why, despite all of the faults I see in Elon, and there's many things I disagree with him on, I still am happy about the fact that he inspires lots of people to push for a better future, to develop new technologies, to push the envelope, right? Like, why are we living in a today that doesn't look anything like they envisioned it in the 1950s? Okay, part of that is because physics, right? But part of that is just because people didn't try to do those things. We didn't put enough money into those things because capitalism doesn't work that way, right? It doesn't just try to make the future better and have jetpacks and hover, like R&D is a loss leader for most companies. So anyway, yeah, we just have to, again, keep pushing the envelope, keep making new products, try to develop these things. I hope that Elon keeps his focus on that and keeps making that happen. And if not, I hope he doesn't get his 25% and somebody else takes over and then continues to do that. But I think that's less likely. Like, I honestly want Elon to stay in charge because I know the standard CEO that comes in is going to shut down all those fun, cool things, stuff. And it's going to just be, how do we maximize profit for making cars?
For
the
next
I don't
quarter.
care about that.
While I'm the CEO, how do I show growth?
Right.
Yeah, which is what everybody else has done. When you mentioned the human form isn't the best for running, it made me think of Steve Jobs would say it's the human on a bicycle, right?
Right, bicycle to the line.
Well, so I do have to say though, as a nerd, I will say the human is actually the best long distance runner of all animals on the planet. So we are better at long distance. That's why you have those like ultra marathon things and stuff like that. Most animals would never be able to compete with a human. Or they couldn't compete.
And think how far they go on a bicycle.
But yes, on a bicycle, sure, we'll go with that.
All right, on the next episode, the new Tesla bicycle. That would be fun, no? If they made one like that, looking like the Cybertruck.
Elon has many times said he isn't making any kind of like Tesla motorcycle. And as usual, it's because of his own personal experience. He almost got killed on a motorcycle once. So Tesla will never make a motorcycle. But people in the medical profession do call them organ donors or something like that. so there's something to that.
All right. Well, guys, really good stuff that came out of the last earning call. I think we're all excited for 2024. Let's see what this year will bring. Great comments in the chat. Thanks, everybody, for joining. I'd say that's a wrap. Thanks to Danny, our producer. And like I said, thanks for joining. If you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter and YouTube. If you'd like to support the show, consider becoming a supporting member. And you can, of course, join us on the Tesla Motors Club website. Guys, it was great to see you. And everybody who's tuned in, go watch season 1 of Westworld.
Laters.